Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Google Partners webinar. Today, we're going to discuss to you about what are the good practices that you are able to apply to your Google Partners profile and to all of the accounts you're actually managing, just so that you could drive yourself towards attaining the Google Partners badge. I'm not alone, so my name is Savannah, but today with me, it's also today and Katerina.
Hi.
So all of us are going to drive you through the three main parts of how to get the best practices in your accounts under your Google Partners profile so that you can then go to the ultimate goal of attaining a Google Partners badge.
All right, so let's get started.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, so first time.
All right, before we start too, you should have a question and answer bar on the right of your screen, so feel free to ask any questions if you have any, and we'll just get started. So today we're going to be talking about pretty much the best practices part of Google Partners platform. So just to give you a brief introduction, so there are 4 requirements to actually get the Google Partners badge. So you have the company profile, so you need to make sure that your whole profile on Google Partners is fully filled pretty much. All the information needs to be on there. Then second is certification. So you need to get all the exams in place so you can get that out of the way as well. And then we have also spend requirements across your managed accounts so that you can show that your agency has a healthy amount of activity. And then lastly, it's the best practices. So basically what we're looking for in Google Partners is that agencies implement best practices in client accounts. So that is what we're going to be focusing on today.
Yeah, so let us go to the next slide.
All right, so best practices. Pretty much what we're looking for in best practices is the fact that we're pretty much reviewing all your client accounts and we're wanting to make sure that they're really getting good service. So one thing we're definitely going to look at is the type and frequency of changes that are happening in the accounts. Second, really important thing is client retention. So we're not looking for agencies to just be switching clients all the time. We're wanting clients to be really satisfied with the product and the agencies, so we can both have really good performance. And also, we're looking at whether you're pretty much making the most out of your clients' budgets. And an important thing here is that for all the accounts, we will be looking at the performance from the day that the account was put under the MCC. So just keep that in mind. All right, so for best practices, we're looking at 4 different categories of best practices you can use. So I'm going to briefly touch on search network best practices. Then today we'll explain about display network. And then we're having Silvana talk about YouTube and some customer care tips as well.
Okay, so let's dive into search network.
All right. Okay, so for the first one, we're looking to add more negative keywords. Pretty much negative keywords allow your customers to really focus in on the searches that are important for them. We don't want them to be showing on searches that are not relevant. So this can potentially also lead to better quality score, better CTR, and so on. So this is one of the best practices that you should definitely use. Furthermore, one thing that you will always hear us talk about on the phones is
site links.
Site links. So site links, along with other ad extensions that we will be talking about as well, are really important. They make the ad more relevant, they make it bigger, and therefore usually they bring more traffic to your customers and better quality traffic as well. So site links are something that takes 2 or 3 minutes and basically best practices implemented on all accounts.
Yeah.
Along with that, there comes more ad extensions. So obviously we have a lot of different ad extensions. Not all are relevant for all clients, but all that are relevant should be implemented. So best practice is pretty much go into all the accounts and implement as many ad extensions as you can for all of your clients, because again, they make the ad bigger, more relevant, bring more traffic, and so on.
And also when the ad then goes into, quality reviews and things like that, because of its relevancy, it's seen as a better ad.
True. After that, we're also looking at keyword best practices. So one thing that is definitely going to be needed in order for you to score the best practices card for Google Partners Badge would be that you add phrase and exact match keywords. Along with that, we will be talking about broad match modifier as well. These are really important as well because they make the quality or the traffic that is coming to your advertisers to be of bigger quality, and generally that's where we're seeing better CTRs, better quality scores, and so on.
And also that's how you focus to get the most out of your budget, especially with if you're starting with accounts that have, that are very budget tight.
Exactly. Another best practice that would be required throughout the accounts, and this is usually one that a lot of clients tend to miss, is that you should add multiple text ads. This is a best practice because of the mere fact that if you have one text ad, you can never compare it to anything. You don't know if there is some other text ad that could be performing better or could be performing worse, and so on. So basically, as you can see on the screen, these three ads are very, very similar, but they're performing very differently. So we're recommending for best practices to implement at least 2 or 3 text ads in each ad group in order for you to see what the best performing ad is and to bring in more quality traffic to your advertisers. And then along with all these tips comes quality score. So basically everything we were saying in the last 5 points was also affecting quality score. But quality score is something that we're really looking at when it comes to Google Partners best practices. So we really want to make sure that agencies are promoting healthy traffic, good advertisers, and so on. So as you can see, quality score contains a lot of different elements, but most of these come from the first 5 points. So basically keyword relevancy, make sure you're using match types. Then you're having ad relevance, make sure you're using a couple of different ads to match your keywords and the content of your web page. We have good CTR that usually comes from basically having really good keywords and also having all ad extensions so the ads can actually be relevant and big and so on. And then we're looking at 2 things that are kind of outside of implementation, but it's historical performance and landing page relevance. So basically make sure that everything you're doing in the account, all the keywords, all the ads are very tightly linked to the landing page, and also make sure that you're setting the campaigns right from the beginning so that you have good historical performance. And again, back to the match types. So we're also wanting to see that we're using more broad match modifier implementations as well. Sometimes we're seeing phrase match keywords or exact match keywords that are relevant for some of the traffic that is coming in for those terms. But when we take into account different order of the words and so on, there's also a significant amount of traffic that is being missed. So basically try to use broad match modifier on top of exact match and phrase match. And then another one for search would also be ad scheduling. So this is kind of a tough one to start off with because we never know at the beginning of the campaign which days or which times of the day are going to be more active. But already through like 2 or 3 weeks of the campaign, you can kind of see where your positions are not as high or where you should invest a little bit more. In a lot of our services, we see weekends as very busy as well, because that's when people have more free time
to go and search.
So basically, once your client is going, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, you will have a clear perspective of what days are better or what days are not performing as well. So make sure you're also using ad scheduling to improve the campaigns.
Yeah, maybe just one of the ideas here before you get data into AdWords, the way to check what are the best days, the best performing days. You can go to your Google Analytics account, and basically, you can check the overall traffic. So not just the paid traffic, but you can, check the organic traffic, and then you can basically mirror that into the account.
Yeah, for sure.
Good tip there today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and then another one for keywords. This is a tricky one. So because there is a best practice to pretty much add more keywords to each ad group. However, if you're already having 100 keywords in your ad group, this is probably not a good tip for you. So what we're saying by this is don't have 2 or 3 keywords in one ad group. What is recommended is somewhere between like 5 and 20. So a good range is probably 10 to 20. And this is because, as I was saying, when you take into account a broad match modifier, an exact match, and phrase match, there's so many different versions that can get quality traffic for your advertisers. So make sure you're using them. And also make sure you're really catching really relevant keywords, and that you're pretty much grouping them into different ad groups based on similarity. So that's a really big one. And basically try to get as many keywords that would be relevant to a customer that would be searching for products or services of your customer. And over to today.
Cool. So we're gonna touch obviously the display network best practices. We just move on to the next slide. So obviously one of the first one is ad placement exclusions, which basically means if, for example, you have a website that is not performing well in your display campaign, you might want to kick it out basically. So the way to check for that is basically to go under the placement report, just tick the box for that placement and exclude it. So the way to obviously check what websites are good and which are not, obviously, is by looking at different metrics like CTR, CPA, conversion rate, etc. And obviously, one question to ask is also if that particular placement fits your customer audience, right? So obviously, the next step would be adding new placements. So if you feel like there's a website, that it's kind of, it's the right for your customer, you might want to add that website to your GDN campaign. Again, the way how to explore new placements is by using our display planners in AdWords. I guess that's the easiest one.
One tip also for placement exclusions is we get this question quite a bit on how to exclude traffic from mobile sites, especially on display. This is a pretty good one. Technically, there is no way to really exclude mobile all the way. But one good tip for display would be to exclude a placement that's called AdSense for mobileapps.com. So that's one that will definitely be better in terms of ignoring some of the mobile apps and showing your ads on them.
I would maybe prior to doing that, really make sure also maybe checking your analytics that you're not getting a high volume of traffic through mobile. Because if that's the case, by suspending it, you might lose a lot of it. But yeah, that's a good tip, I think.
Yeah, this is mostly a tip for those who are not a fan of mobile traffic, or you're not getting high quality traffic from mobile. So good tip to keep in mind.
Cool. So moving forward, so we mentioned the placements. So obviously you can add new placements, and then we have the topic targeting. So let's say you have a music store, you're selling instruments, and you want to target people that are interested in music. So obviously we have an option to target by topic, and you might want to pick the topic music, and then you're going to place your GDN ads on the sites that are related to that topic. So moving on, and then one way of targeting is obviously by keywords. So you can add obviously keywords to the campaign, keywords that are relevant to your product or your customers. And again, also it's also the case of a display campaign. You might want to go with broad keywords or with a bit more specific keywords. Although I have to warn you here, usually the very specific keywords don't really work that well. So you might have to go a bit more broad, more broadly. And one thing which is really important in case of display, as well as of course the search campaigns, is that you basically separate the campaigns based on your client's objective or goal. So for example, if you have a campaign, which is aimed at building awareness, you might
YouTube, which we're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about it later. So
don't take it away.
I'm just going to touch the display mostly. Yeah. So if it's building awareness, you might want to target very broadly, maybe just demographic without any limitation. If it's more focused on driving action, so sales, you might want to focus on keywords. If it's somewhere in between, so increased consideration, it's maybe topics. maybe specific placements that you want to focus on. And important thing to point out again, try to separate campaigns by the advertiser's goals. So have one for awareness, consideration, drive action, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And oh yeah, not to forget, obviously, remarketing. So try to set up a remarketing also in your accounts. So as most of you know, the remarketing means basically you have a visitor that visited your website, and basically we place the cookie on their browser, and then you have the ability to remarket them.
So to target them again with the same message or a tailored message specifically.
Although, as far as I know, I mean, most of the agencies in Slovenia are, I know you're quite familiar, right, with the remarketing. And in Adriatics, pardon me. So I'm pretty sure that you're all using it more or less. Yeah. But
it's always, sometimes when you're doing a lot of campaigns for different clients, sometimes you might, forget. But it's a great way how you get the client into the loophole of, when they search the website, when they're coming from search for display, and even, that the ad is following them, so that this communication line doesn't get broken.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we're looking for when we're talking about Google partners. Sometimes we have questions from agencies saying, how do I not have best practices? Some accounts in your MCC might have all these implemented, but make sure that this is what is supposed to be implemented for all your accounts, no matter how big of an account it is or how little of an account it is. All of these should have negative keywords, site links, and so on, because we really are trying to get, the best face out there for all the customers that are using AdWords.
And basically, if you're trying to do a great campaign and that it goes by the rules of how it will be also interpreted by the system as a great campaign, these are all the basic steps. So actually, when you are doing a campaign, no matter the network, these are all the steps that you should take just in your favor already.
Yeah.
So and then if we're actually going to the next one, I'm going to briefly guide you through YouTube best practices, and then we're going to conclude it with customer care. When it comes to YouTube, I do know that this is a solution that's not always used for all the clients, but for those it's a great solution to actually increase brand awareness, and it's a great way how you now, in times when people are switching from normal desktops to more and more mobiles, how you get them in the moments that matter. And it's a great thing when it comes to video. Also, our system is taking it into account for looking for the best practices for the badges. And the first thing, we do check the budget, because normally is if you're trying this as a new solution and you're not quite sure about it, normally budgets are quite tight on this one. But, we are suggesting that you do increase video campaigns budget usage, just so that it doesn't actually happen that, all goes to display, all goes to search, and then, video is left with zero or €0.50 or something similar.
Yeah, and to be honest, because YouTube is pretty new to our markets, even with a tiny bit of an increase in your budget, you can really get a lot.
Yeah.
So one best practice as well is reach out to your customers and make sure to see if they have a video, because most of them don't think of that when they're thinking Google ads, and it can actually be one of the most beneficial types of advertising. And with very low budgets, they will actually run really well.
And it's also a great thing because if you think about how much money gets invested into the production of video, for a very small fraction of that price, you can actually now use it, and you're able to distribute it around, internet network, and then actually able to check how many people viewed the video, at which point they switched off, and how did they interact with it, which is a great way of how to also then, give metrics and you give results to the client.
Yeah.
Maybe just to point out one more thing. Yeah. So I'm getting usually a lot of questions, in terms of, is video only appropriate for clients that are aiming at driving awareness, or
to big clients that have like big products. Yeah.
That's not the case, and we've seen actually ads that were super performance oriented, and they were actually driving direct sales. It's of course a very small percentage of those, right? Because YouTube is just not meant to have a direct sales approach, but we were seeing quite many examples of direct sales.
The thing is, I always suggest is, if you think about YouTube as a whole new channel, and it's a free channel, so, it doesn't do any harm for the client to then get their YouTube channel there and get some basic clips just with information, because people do now use YouTube as their, one of the number one go-to ways of getting information of how to do stuff. So let's say you have, I don't know, if you're doing this for a toothbrush or a toothpaste, how to properly kind of editing videos or things like that. And this does drive also, organic awareness. which you didn't actually pay for with advertising, but you got it. And it's also, they were normally you had them on web, you had them in newspapers. Now this is how you also get them on YouTube and television. Yeah. So when it comes to increased video view rate, when it comes to this is also, it's a soft one. It's a tricky one because it goes into the nature of how a video should be done. But some basic points: make short videos. Normally a good video is up to 1 minute. 1 minute 44 seconds. 144 seconds is like that top attention rate. Yeah. Or if you're not going for short video, go for a great storyline. This is, it's easier said than done, but really go for the focus. If a client has something that they're passionate about, a good product or a good story or why they're doing it, really feature it. But then when it also comes to the quality of the video, make sure that is good. When it comes to the message, make sure it's coherent and very up to point. When it comes also to the fact that if you have any other videos that are following, do make sure that the link is there. And of course, to actually increase the view rate, do target correctly. Because if you know your audience, you will know how to communicate to your audience. You will know how to, properly put out the features that you want. And also, how to then do other things. And to really target them correctly, use also add keywords to your video campaigns so that when people search for it, it's also there. You do have to have in mind that YouTube is not like search network. So here targeting is different. And it also goes by more demographics, interest topics, and things like that. It doesn't go like search when you input keywords and it's magic. So here, this is like, it's a more narrowing feature, but do have it in place.
But maybe to add to that, I'm seeing a lot of accounts where the keyword targeting is kind of underestimated. It's definitely not that much volume, but we're
it's
seeing
still important. Yeah.
Exactly, it's still important, and we're seeing a lot of people searching for how to.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
so if you kind of try to tie your brand to to that search term.
Yeah, normally, and that's why I'm always saying, turn to your customer, to an agency, turn to your customer. Why did they actually start to sell something? Why do they have that? Because they are, answering a certain question or answering a certain need. And basically, people with that need, they normally do go to YouTube and they'll search how to, or they'll go to search and search how to. And, having that in mind, that your whole communication process goes into educating your client or educating your customer, makes it really easier to also understand how you're going to place things. So when we come back to YouTube, target TrueView campaigns to all networks. This is great just so that you're featured on all of the, not only on mobile, not only on YouTube, but on all the networks, just so that your message goes across. Use also all true video formats. Here, what I would suggest you actually do separate campaigns just so that you're able to track what gets best the most. Because when it comes to previous networks, you will be able to see in the metrics, you will be able to see where they are featured. You're not able to choose correctly, but you're able to see where they're featured. And when it comes to the true video formats, you have in-stream or TrueView. And basically, you can start with both of them. But I would suggest to you to just use them in separate campaigns, just so that you'll be able to measure them to see the right path. Just so that in the end, when you're optimizing for the future, where were the best things. And also add interest categories to video campaigns. As we were saying, the more you narrowly target your message to your audience, the better. So using interest to how to actually to get the audience is also a great way. And create call to action video overlays. Now you have this feature. So do use it, because when it comes to attention span and how to keep their attention, it's nice that at a certain part of the video something pops up and tells you what to do. So use everything you're able to when it comes to YouTube, and especially that's my beloved feature.
Oh, that's my favorite one.
Yeah, like when it comes to storytelling with video or getting that message across, it's about remarketing. And YouTube, once you link your YouTube channel with your your AdWords and you get the YouTube AdWords campaign, you have so many possibilities of remarketing lists. Start with the basic one, just so that you are, targeting everyone. But then you can go to similar audience. You can go by interactions. So really, before you start a campaign, look at what the options are to then, discuss with the client or with yourself. What is that you want in the end that it's done? Because here you can also be with storytelling. You can be very creative. So that's why it's really a good one. But we can go into details, but it's just for an overview. So that comes when it comes to YouTube, that's it. It's all about brand awareness, and more about YouTube. You can also find our help article centers, and we also did a lot of webinars locally. So you will find them in Slovenian, Croatian, and Serbian.
Yep.
You can search them on our YouTube channels. But now to the final point that we also check when it comes to best practices, it's actually customer care best practices. This is all much to do with how you as an agency are dealing with your clients. And we are able to check some of that, but what I'm going to first tell you about is just more, how it should go in theory. It's basically when you get a client, it's great to give them the best support, to give them the best onboarding, and to really set expectations so that whenever they go back in your communication, maybe this will not be just a one campaign, you will be with them for more years to come. Whenever they go back with you, they have the same standardized experience. And for this to be standardized, really, ask them for their feedback, how they were, satisfied, be in constant communication, because often what can happen is they will call us and ask us about you, because, some clients think that we manage agencies and that we are, that we are able to reach you. So from that perspective, when we see that, we are trying to tell you, really get that communication going and keep it and sustaining it. And then when it comes to how we look at it from best practices, it's actually about how often you optimize an account. So even if you apply those best practices once and you think, okay, I'm done for this, for the whole, it's not true. We actually look at how often you do it. So you have to sustain these best practices. And also if you're doing it for the benefit of your client, actually optimizing it on a regular basis is what keeps the progress going and what gives the best results. So when it comes to, in the end, for best practices when it comes to customer care, do check in the accounts regularly, because we do take into account the timestamps of when you checked, and then also experiment with all the new added ads, groups, and targeting options. Just because, as Katerina said, and as today explained, this all goes from all the networks of how we actually apply best practices. So basically, when it comes to best practices, this is it from my side for YouTube and customer care.
All right, let me just see if there are any questions while we're wrapping up. So
Yes.
Feel free to ask any questions. But basically, this is probably the most important thing about Google Partners. Yeah. Best practices is not just something that most agencies tend to miss. It's something that will bring you all the rest of the things that you need for the Google Partners badge. If you have these best practices in place, most likely your customers will be really happy. They will try to stay with the agency as long as they can, or and so on. And then again, that will bring you spend, and then you have all the 4 requirements that are needed for the Google Partners badge. So just make sure that you pretty much go through all these points. Even if you don't have some of these campaigns, for example, if you don't have a YouTube campaign and you just cannot implement it for a customer, make sure that you're implementing all the other points for search and display, and vice versa. So basically, this is kind of a brief summary of what you can do and some of our tips, but there's also a lot of really high quality tips on our help center that you can also check out in case you're missing ideas for negative keywords, or you're not exactly sure how to implement site links or any other types of ad extensions. And then we're here as well.
So call us.
Feel free to call us if you're having any issues with any of the customers, so we can actually help you implement best practices and get your badge.
Yeah. So getting a badge actually enables you that you're then in the search engine of Google Partners. So when people actually who call us, so I don't want to do AdWords on my own anymore. Can somebody else do it for me? Do you have anyone? And then we actually we point them to the Google Partners search engine. And there, if you have a badge, they're able to search for you. And that's the best benefit of it all.
Yeah, not only that, even you get to put this badge on your website. So this makes you really credible as an agency. It brings in more and more traffic that you can, potentially be profitable on. So.
So we got a question.
Okay, Joseph asked, what if we use some third-party app reporting and AdWords editor? Is that visible in our timestamps? I don't log too much to MCC.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, that's actually one of the trickier ones. Yeah.
Still though, what we are pretty much looking at the most is the change history in the account itself. So whenever you're making any changes in AdWords editor, for example, we're still having the timestamps in your AdWords account. as to when this was changed. So basically, it might be, you can even check this in your own accounts. If you go into the AdWords account you're making changes to with AdWords Editor, if you just go to Tools and Change History, you can actually see that there's a timestamp, but it's going to be a timestamp for like 20 different changes that you just made. Yeah. It's going to be timestamped all at the same time. So yes, we do take that into account.
Yeah, but as said, don't do that change just once, go more often.
And then and the third-party app reporting, like that should be all the same. If you're changing anything in the AdWords itself, all the changes still get pretty much stamped, I guess, in our change history. That is just a different way, because if you're doing it in AdWords, for example, if you change language, this will get stamped at 140. And if you change, keywords 5 minutes later, it's going to be stamped at 146. Whereas if you do it all through AdWords Editor or through some other, software, it will just get timestamped all at the same time.
Okay. So thank you so much for the question, Josip. Any other questions? Because otherwise we're going to slowly wrap it up. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
I think that would be it, but you all know our phone lines.
Yeah.
So please feel free to call us if you have any questions about any of this, and we'd be happy to help.
And thank you also for tuning in into Best Practices for Google Partners Network. If any questions, we're here. And now go to work.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.